One day she's a child. The next, she's a wife. That's the reality for 1 in 3 girls in Bangladesh. At best, they lose their childhood and a chance for education. At worst, they face dangerous childbirth, violence, and virtual slavery.
Bangladesh is just one of the many countries in which young girls find themselves as brides. Child marriage is described by UNICEF as a fundamental violation of human rights, and yet the International Center for Research on Women states that 1/3 of girls in the developing world are married before the age of 18, and 1 in 9 are married before the age of 15. It's estimated that if things don't change, and soon, that 150 million more girls will be married before they turn 18 by 2030. Girls are supposed to have the chance to dream of becoming princesses or astronauts or lawyers, but child marriage often robs them of their chance to pursue education and follow their dreams. Instead, they're forced into a life of servitude that they're unlikely to escape. Child marriage also presents girls with a myriad of health problems, both physically as well as mentally. Another threat to young girls is female trafficking, the trade of women who are almost always forced into this system, and many are under the age of 18. As of 2018, about 70% of all victims of human trafficking were women and girls, according to the UN Office on Drugs and Crime. Child marriages and female trafficking are both huge problems separately, but together, they present yet another threat to women globally.
I didn't feel good getting married. I thought, how am I going to live with this man? Then, 3 months later, I realized I have to stay here. I have to stay at my husband's house for the rest of my life.
The International Labour Organization, or ILO, classifies forced marriage as a part of modern-day slavery, and estimated in 2016 that there were 15.4 million victims of forced marriage, with 5.7 million of them being children. The organization has also stated that 84% of these victims are female. Child marriage is a complex issue, and many factors play a role, but an important one to acknowledge is that of trafficking. A large amount of trafficked females, especially in South Asia, are forced into marriages. But that's not to say that only these countries are facing this issue. Even within the US and UK, girls are trafficked and married off. This issue is a global one with no boundaries. Trafficked women and girls forced into marriages are generally put in subservient roles and often face severe abuse from their husbands. Most often, this occurs in areas of conflict and destabilized regions, meaning that women and girls that are already in vulnerable positions now not only have to be worried about ongoing conflicts, but the possibility of being trafficked as well. But why does this happen? What are the driving factors? The ILO writes in their Global Estimates on Modern Slavery report that in some parts of the world, young girls and women are forced to marry in exchange for payment to their families, the cancellation of debt, or to settle family disputes. Poverty makes many families feel that they have little other choice than to turn their daughters into commodities and hand them off for marriage. This factor is why the majority of child marriages occur in regions with higher poverty rates, even within more economically developed countries, or MEDCs. Having daughters can be seen as a financial burden, but a marriage means families don't have to worry about paying for their daughters anymore. Areas of conflict are another region where child marriages are more likely to happen, especially through the trafficking of young girls. Those in areas of conflict have a significantly higher chance of being forced into marriage, as armed groups often abduct young girls for the purpose of marrying them off to soldiers as a form of payment or settlement. At times, forced marriage can also be used as a threat to a population under control of armed groups. Culture and tradition are another part of this issue. Communities have been marrying girls at young ages for years, and many wonder why they suddenly have to change. Communities often use child marriage as a way to prevent boys and girls from forming intimate relationships at young ages, which are frowned upon in many parts of the world. It's unfortunate to think, but families also use child marriage as a way to do what they think will protect their daughters. Married girls and women are seen as having a lower risk of being victims of violence and abuse outside the home. If they don't leave for school or work, people believe that girls are more protected from the outside world and its horrors. Migrant girls are also at a higher risk of being forced into marriage, as many are seen as easier targets for traffickers because of their vulnerable status and are kidnapped and sold. As mentioned earlier, girls forced into child marriages often face health issues, one of the biggest being childbirth. It has consistently been one of the leading causes of death for girls between the ages of 15 and 19 globally. Many girls' bodies simply cannot handle the strain, and if these girls do survive childbirth, their children are often at risk of malnutrition. Girls in child marriages are also at higher risk of stroke, diabetes, and the contraction of HIV, which in turn leaves them more vulnerable to illness and disease. Regarding mental health, it's hard to imagine that girls in this situation wouldn't struggle with theirs. Many face domestic violence, psychological abuse, and other forms of trauma at the hands of their husbands, leading to a significantly decreased psychological well-being. Dr. Yan Lee Strat, a lead researcher for a study on this topic, has stated that with a 41% increased risk of mental disorder, child marriage should be considered a major psychological trauma. The toll that marriage takes on young girls is so debilitating that stories of them taking their lives because of it are not uncommon.
ঘুমাইছে রাত্রে ঘুমাইছে
ঘুমাইছিও 9 মিনিট
এখন কি মনে হচ্ছে তুমি তোমার জামাইকে দেখবা